Welcome back, my friends. This is another episode of Ashley Reads Too Much. Here's all the books that I read in August. Quite a few of them are from independent authors, and I borrowed a lot of them from the library. I will never stress enough. Use the library while you still can. Starting off, we have Girl and the Machine. This is a sci-fi retelling of Beauty and the Beast, a YA sci-fi retelling. And I thought it was super, super clever to use science fiction in order to do like the enchantments sort of thing, because how else are you going to do talking furniture with a computer? I enjoyed the pacing, and it was edited very well, especially for an independent novel, because a lot of the times the independent novels, I'm just like, did you have an editor? And I really like the cover. Plus, Girl and the Machine, Beauty and the Beast. There was like some nods to the movie Beauty and the Beast, the Disney film from like 1991. I love that movie, by the way. I've watched it so many times. I think I almost ruined the VHS tape as a kid. I am dating myself. Anyway, Girl and the Machine was fantastic. This is about a 400 and something page read, so it's a little bit longer. And there were some twists in there that I was not expecting. I was just like, ooh, that's a good twist. And it came out of nowhere, and it was spectacular. And if I was gonna pick a favorite independent read, yeah, This was my favorite of the month of August. Very well written, highly recommend. Babel by R.F. Kuang. If you don't know about this one, this is like a historical fantasy fiction that's set in like a fantastical Oxford. There's a tower in which people who are really, really good at linguistics are able to harness the power of linguistics. The magic in this was absolutely spectacular. It was very, very smart. I was super fascinated by all of the linguistic properties, the descriptions of like the root words, and how if you are really, really good at the language and you fully understand the meaning, you're able to write it on like a silver bar, or because silver is like the conductor for this magic to work. This was fantastic. I loved it way better than the Poppy War. Granted, I only read the first book of the trilogy, but I have the second book on hold at my library, and I'm planning on continuing because a lot of people like Dragon Republic better than the Poppy War. Anyway, I digress. This was fantastic. Super, super smart. R.F. Kuang is a very, very smart individual. There were some twists and turns, some betrayals, and the messaging about colonialism and racism I think are very important, and how governments are corruptible, and oftentimes we shouldn't just take what governments say at face value. She has a PhD in East Asian languages. I just read that here. And literatures at Yale. Yeah, she's smart. She's smart cookie.
Genius.
The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. I rented this one from my library. Again, use your library. So this is a historical murder mystery, takes place in the 1970s. In New York. It kind of bounces around between present day of like the 70s versus flashbacks, because there are two murder mysteries that are going on. I thought the writing was beautiful. Like, Liz Moore is very talented with her words, but the story I felt was lacking. I was not a fan of the story, and the ending was severely disappointing. And some of the characters were annoying, and I felt like the women were a little weak, and I'm not a big fan of weak female characters. I mean, there's a time and a place for some, but I want to see them grow from being weak and timid to establishing themselves and finding their power. I felt like this book did not deliver in those regards. So this isn't one that I would recommend. I felt like it was a little bit of a waste of my time, but I did think that Liz is a very talented author, and I'm looking forward to reading other of her books, because maybe this story just wasn't it. This story just didn't jive with me, but I might enjoy her other works, because I definitely feel like she's very talented. If you disagree with me, because this book is very popular currently, I'm more than happy to discuss your thoughts in the comments, because I didn't like it. Well, I'm sorry. I always feel bad when I don't like a story, because it's somebody's work. But at the same time, this is my honest review. Like I said, Liz is very talented, and maybe this story is one that you will jive with. So highly recommend to just check out your library and see if that's the thing is with libraries, is you can go check out a book, see if it's something that you jive with, and you didn't spend any money on it. So if you didn't jive with it, you didn't feel like you wasted your money, which is great.
Waste your money on a lot of ragamuffin birds? Certainly not.
Living the Good Death. This was fantastic. This is another independent author. So the premise of this is death is an entity, and it starts off with her reaping a soul, and then suddenly she wakes up and she finds herself within a mortal body, and she's going through a bunch of different ways of trying to return to her role as Death because she's not actively being Death. People aren't dying properly. I really don't like giving spoilers for these reviews, but this line, it's towards the end of the book. You can fast forward and go to the next one, but I'm gonna read it because I thought it was like the whole theme of this book, which I found fantastic. All of a sudden, out of the blue, my life was turned upside down, and I realized that I had been wrong, that every moment of every day was unique for every single person. Basically, the story was about valuing life and finding joy in living rather than just focusing on death, which is, you know, something that Death had to learn themselves. And it ends happily. I like a happy ending. It was a nice little wrapped up button. I am in awe. Look at this. Look at this cover. That is fantastic cover art. Like, doesn't this just draw you in? Just be like, yeah, I want to read it. And there's a good story inside. So I'd highly recommend this for anybody who's fans of urban fantasy or the supernatural. There were a couple of points that I felt like were dropped along the way, but ultimately I wasn't bothered by it because I thought it was some solid writing. So, well done, Scott. Bravo! In the Hills Above the Gristmill by Kalvin Ellis. In case you can't tell, this is like a thriller murder mystery. Good job on the cover. This is another independent author. This is a murder mystery, takes place in Appalachia, and it's told in the third-person omniscient point of view. And so the thing is with murder mystery, when you read it, you kind of want to be surprised as well along the way. This is not the case with this book, but I wasn't upset. It felt more like, you know, when you watch those shows and you receive information as the viewer, but then the other character doesn't know what that information is, and then the whole point of watching this show is trying to see if this character can figure out what you know. So that's what this was. You know who the murderer is pretty quickly, but then you're reading about this other character who's trying to figure out who the murderer is while also trying to avoid certain situations. So you're just like, oh, don't open that door.
Come on, touch it, touch the door.
This one had me on the edge of my seat. I really, really enjoyed it. And I look forward to reading more from this author. Cassandra in Reverse. This book was delightful. I have never read a book told from the point of view of somebody with autism, and I felt like they really captivated that feeling. So it's a bit of an urban fantasy. Cassandra is able to manipulate time, but can only go backwards and like redo things. And she's navigating how to be around people because she's has a difficult time in social situations. It was super charming. This was a very charming book and eye-opening for me as somebody who doesn't have autism to have a better perspective of somebody who has this diagnosis and how life can be pretty difficult for them, but they are no less of a human being because of being on the spectrum. So we go through her daily struggles and her discovering her power and trying to redo things over to try to fit into the mold that society has made for her, and then ultimately discovering herself and finding joy in herself and blossoming. So this is one of those where the woman is one way, and then we see a really great character arc, and I thought it was pretty great writing. Highly recommend. I gave it like a 4 out of 5 stars, I think, because there were some parts that I felt were lacking, but altogether the story was fantastic. Solasta, the Highlander Fay. This was another independent novel. I'm kind of trying to follow the romantasy-ish trend, but it wasn't. So it's like, that's a weird, okay, I need to get into it with this romantasy thing. What even is romantasy? Because a lot of books that I've read that are classified as romantasy, they're just fantasy that have little bits of romance thrown in there. When I think of like a romance, it's kind of more like smut. That's what I think it is. And a lot of the romantasies that I've read are not that. It's just they're pretty fleshed out, like the world building and whatnot. But there's an interest between the two main characters, the male lead and the female lead. And anyway, I digress. I feel like we need to define that genre a little bit better. So this had a romantic element to it, but it wasn't considered, like, I would say, smut, because it adheres to the Highlander, because it takes place in Scotland, like the culture of the time, where if you were not married, it was frowned upon. Big no-no.
Naughty.
Just like a brief summary that's spoiler-free. This very high, powerful family escapes from the fairy realm into the mortal realm because there is an evil king who wants to harvest their powers, and wreak havoc and destruction. That's literally all he wants to do, is just wreak havoc and destruction. The story was interesting, I'm not gonna lie. I finished it because I wanted to know what would happen with the story. However, the writing was very, like, from a novice. It was not constructed very well. It was like, it felt like, so this is like 200 something odd pages. It literally felt like a list of, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. It was told in the third person, omniscient point of view, so it didn't really follow one specific character, and the narrator knew everything that was going on. And I think that hurt this story because there were so many plot holes. They just tried to like plug them as they went along, and it was pretty jarring to just be like, I'm reading along, and then suddenly this random character comes in who solved this problem that happened a little bit ago that I had a question about, and you're just like, oh, okay. So it was kind of a bit of an afterthought. Personally, I think this book would have done better if it was done in a first-person narrative and just followed Brianna, who's the main Fay girl, who she's not like other girls, you know, kind of keeping within the structure of what a typical romantasy is, and I'm pretty sure it would have done super well if they were querying this to publishers. Altogether, I enjoyed the story, but the writing was lacking enough that I wouldn't really recommend it to anybody to read because it was a bit tough to get past. However, the ideas were fantastic, and if you're watching this author, I really hope that you continue writing because you have great ideas. And writing takes practice just like anything else. I'm currently writing my debut novel, and it's hard and it takes practice. As I'm writing my debut novel, I've noticed several mistakes in my own writing, and I go back and I try to edit it, and then I get in this loop of just editing the same page over and over and over again, and then I never progress, and then I'm still stuck at like 15,000 words. Heavens to Betsy. I'm supposed to be done by November. That's the deadline that I put on myself. I will be done. I will finish it, but it is difficult. And so that is why especially with these reviews, I never want an author to feel like they can't do it, or, oh, if they had one bad review, then that means they're really terrible at their job. No, it's not. It's very difficult, and reviews are highly subjective. And so keep writing, because I think your ideas are fantastic, and I would love to read more of what you write.
The limit does not exist.
I don't normally read biographies, but I read I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy. Since I'm an actor myself, very drawn toward other actors' memoirs, biographies. They're not dead yet. When is it? What is it a memoir? Is it when they're dead? Jennette's dead, not dead. She's very much alive. Autobiography? I'm dumb. But as an actor myself, I like reading other actors about their life, because just trying to see a little glimpse into the industry and what it's like. She went through some stuff working for Nickelodeon, and if you've seen the documentary about all the exposure that happened during the early 2000s during Nickelodeon, is no bueno. Pedophilia and predation. Basically, Jennette wrote all about how when she started acting at 6, because of her mom really wanting her to do it, and dealing with OCD and stress, and ultimately her eating disorders, and navigating an industry that she didn't want to be a part of in the first place, but her mom really wanted her to be a part of it, and she wanted to make her mom proud, and the abuse and emotional manipulation that her mom... I'm glad your mom died too, Jennette. Holy crap. And the religious control. There was a lot. She's only 33? I think, yeah, she's only 33 right now. And this is everything that she went through. You think you have childhood trauma? This girl is the poster child for childhood trauma. Oh my gosh. The chapters were also incredibly short, so it was really easy to kind of binge read, because you're just like, what? That's it? Next. I'm happy for you, girl, that you are speaking out and were so vulnerable, because this is a highly, highly vulnerable book. And also proud that you're able to write more and find joy in actually doing something that you want to do versus doing something you think somebody else wants you to do, because, you know, parents. I highly recommend. Even if you're not an actor or in the industry, this was a very visceral read. Bride by Ali Hazelwood. This is the first of Ali Hazelwood I think I read, and I think it will be the last. The writing was very juvenile. Very, very, very not good.
Yeah, it wasn't that good.
I only started reading it because a friend of mine was reading it, and she was telling me how much she hated it, and I was just like, ooh, I want to get in on the gossip. Again, going back to it, writing is difficult. It's very, very difficult, and Ali Hazelwood's writing style is not one that I gravitate towards. I mean, she's a number New York Times published author, right? She's doing well for herself. So she can handle my negative review. It was weird. The story was odd and not structured very well and kind of bounced around, I felt. And then sexual scenes, because, you know, it's Ali Hazelwood, she's a romance author. What? If you've read this book, you probably know what I'm talking about. But since it's so it's vampires, werewolves, humans in this urban fantasy setting. And she tried to make anatomy different. You following along?
You get it?
But the terms that she's using to describe said differences in anatomy, it made me so uncomfortable. And I laughed. Like, I was physically laughing. I was like, haha, what is this? I do not recommend. Nope. Hard pass. I'm sorry, Ali, but you're doing fine. There's people who love you. It's okay. Now for my all-around favorite novel. Favorite that I read in August. Girl in the Machine, favorite independent novel. This novel, I think, is a masterpiece. James by Percival Everett. If you know the tale of Huck Finn, this is kind of a retelling, but it follows Jim, who is a slave, and you get his story. I recommend listening to this on audio because there's a lot of dialogue, and I think the performance was fantastic. It's kind of read like a movie script, but it was absolutely stellar, and the writing was beautiful, and the characterizations was fantastic. Characters were so great. There's a reason there are so many awards on this book, because it's fan-freaking-tastic. So far, I think this is the best book that I've read all year, and I've read some pretty amazing books. This is top tier. I honestly feel like this book is going to take place amongst the shelves of the classics. It'll be right there, tucked in. James. It's flawless. My 6-star read. 6 stars. It's amazing. Not only is the story captivating, but the messaging behind it is so very important. And I cannot recommend enough anybody read this book. Go now. Get the library, audio, whatever, wherever you want to get it. Barnes & Noble. Everyone needs this book. And they need to read it yesterday. They needed to read it yesterday. So chop chop. That's what I read in August. What did you read in August? What was your favorite read of August? I was very happy to have read a lot of really great books this past month, and I hope you guys check out. If you're gonna check out any of the books that I've read, it has to be this one. Anyway, happy reading, friends, and we'll catch you next time. See ya.